Hey guys, what's up? It's Kevin for the win, and we're back for another edition of Diablo 3. Today on the channel, we are taking a look at the Legacy of Dreams Poison Scythe build. Keep in mind, as with all builds, there are multiple different variations. In particular, for this particular Legacy of Dreams set, there are many different variations that you can run. You could put Leoric's Crown on here. That depends on the situation. Alright, so let's get into it. Before anything off, I have to explain the Legacy of Dreams gem to everybody. The bonus is doubled for ancient items that you have. While you have no set bonuses, equip every legendary item you have equipped, increasing your damage dealt by 341.25% damage, and reduces your damage taken by 2%. Very important, max this gem out as high as you can. If you do not use this gem, this set will not work for you. You want Andriel's Visage, attacks release a Poison Nova that deals 398% weapon damage as poison to enemies within 10 yards. Henceforth, why we call it Legacy of Dreams Poison Scythe build. Qualia Cuirass. While above 93% primary resource, all damage taken is reduced by 50%. Razilov's Volition. Skeletal Mage gains the effect of the Gift of Death Ruin, which is going to be kind of important. Skeletal Mage is very important in this build to be able to push out a lot of damage. Stone Gauntlets. Getting hit increases your armor by 50%, but reduces your movement speed by 15% and attack speed by 20%. The effect stacks up to 5 times. Tragul's Corroded Fang. This is the weapon you're going to use. Curse Scythe gets Grim Scythe and now has a 100% chance to apply curses, and you deal extra damage. Dainty's Binding, honestly, is a placeholder. It could be anything. You could have gold skin on here. It really doesn't matter. It depends what you're going to be messing around with the build. You could use curses in here anyway, though. Depth Diggers, this is what you really want to use. Primary skills generate more damage. Ice Climbers, gain immunity to freeze and immobilize effects. Conventional elements for your ring. Crispin Sentence for your ring as well. Ledger's Disdain. This is going to be very important because Grim Scythe deals an additional 79% damage when it strikes and regains some essence. So this is going to be really abused in this build with the Skeletal Mages that we're using. We're also using Flavor of Time and Nemesis Bracers. That way we can abuse Pylons and also get extra elite packs to kind of help with the clear times here. So this is the build. Primarily what you want are all ancient, legendary, or higher things. So keep that in mind. Grim Scythe, Curse Scythe is the primary. That's where all damage is coming from. Bone Spear, Blighted Marrow. That way we can zone enemies. Bone Armor, Dislocation. That way we can be a bit more tanky. Simulacrum is mandatory to be able to, for this build to work. So definitely use that. Siphon Blood, Power Shift. You could also switch this for Frailty. It's also a matter of your personal preference. Skeletal Mage, Contamination. This is going to be very helpful to the build. Passives, as you see here, we have this and Eternal Torment. Standalone, which is kind of important, Swift Harvesting, because we're using Grim Scythe, Ice Cube to follow this to the T. Navarre's Black Death, Illusionary Boots, and you want Haunted Visions as your necklace. Now, for the follower, I'm still perfecting follower builds. If you've been following the channel, you know this. So if you mention in the comments, well, why isn't your follower maxed out and stuff? Well, clearly you haven't been on the channel a long time, so I feel bad for you. Okay, so this is one we're rocking right now, Sage's Passage. That way we can get Death Breath, so if we were using Nephilim Rifts, that's why we recommend. Gold Skin is not too bad. Flavor of Time to extend Pylon effects and Nemesis Bracers. Those two in particular, Flavor of Time and Nemesis Bracer, are kind of the things I feel like every follower should run, just because it gives you extra abilities on your sets that sometimes maybe you can't run those particular items. For the purpose of this showcase, we will be doing a greater of 60. That way I can show you how this fares in Torment 13. Then we are going to do a greater of 70, 75, and 80. That way it will take you all the way past Torment 16 so you can see things for yourself. I will do my best to explain how this build works for you guys. So keep that in mind. Pay attention. If you fast forward or you stop here, you're not going to be able to use this build correctly. First thing on the Greater Rift, you need to activate your Simulacrums. That way, when you swing your Poison Scythe, you will be doing maximum amount of damage. Now, in order to even do more damage, you need to spend your Essence. On lower Greater Rifts, you're not really going to need to rely heavily on wasting a lot of Essence, because most things you should be able to breathe on them, and they die. But for the purposes of demonstration, what you usually want to do is you will want to cast a Skeletal Mage somewhere within a group of large enemies, case in point here, and then swing your Curse Scythe. When you swing your Curse Scythe and you have used up some Essence, it's going to gain back some Essence, which triggers Ledger's Disdain, which does even more damage that way. So it's very important. This is why you want to use your Skeletal Mages and also use your Bone Spears to just put out and waste some essence. So then you just swing with Grim Scythe, and usually everything you hit is going to be killed in one hit thanks to Tregul's Corroded Fang anyway, because remember, we are applying curses. Also keep in mind we have Dainty's Binding, which increases the amount of tankiness that we have thanks to that. So keep that in mind. That's why we're running Dainty's Binding on here. You could switch it out, but you're not going to be doing as much optimal damage, and you won't be able to take as many hits. So always keep an eye on your essence. This is one of the few times on the channel where I tell you it's very important to burn your essence to be able to do more damage. Now, another thing that's very important for this build is you want to be tanky and be able to do a lot of damage. You will need to keep an eye on your bone armor. Ideally, you always want this to be maintained at 10 stacks. The reason for this is, obviously, you take less damage, you can deal more damage. So obviously, you got to keep an eye on that. Every once in a while, just refresh on the bone armor, even if you're at 10 stacks, to just kind of reset the stack, so to speak, so that way you won't run out. If you see it run back to 0, that's when you leave yourself significantly vulnerable. Also, keep in mind that you need to burn your essence, at least casting a Skeletal Mage every once in a while, or even multiple times in your Greater Rift pushing, because that will deal the maximum damage with Curse Scythe. So keep that in mind. If you just swinging your Curse Scythe, yeah, on low Greater Rifts, you're going to be able to push things significantly easy. But then as you get higher up, and you're going to be wondering, because this has come up before, why am I not dealing as much damage to these things when I have all these things maxed up and optimized? Well, friend, this is one of those situations where you weren't burning the essence. You burn it through Bone Spear, you burn it through Skeletal Mage. As long as you're burning a little bit of it, you will be perfectly fine. So you always got to kind of burn through it. On lower Greater Rifts, as you see here, even I'm kind of ignoring the fact that I'm supposed to be expending a bit more essence, because usually you'll one-shot things on Torment 13. Now, keep in mind, because I know this will come up on the comments, because it always comes up in the comments for Legacy of Dreams Poison Scythe, ideally, all your pieces should be Ancient Legendary or Primal Ancient Legendary, because Legacy of Dreams effect is doubled for every Ancient Legendary piece that you have. Now, keep in mind, unlike our particular armors, such as set armors, where it's easier to kind of roll for these things, it's going to take you a long time to get a full Ancient Legendary, or Primal Ancient Legendary for that matter, set here. My Stone Gauntlets should be Ancient Legendary, but unfortunately they did not drop, and the ones that dropped were not decent enough rolls for what I wanted to accomplish. Another thing that comes up on Legacy of Dreams Poison Scythe topics constantly, and I know it will come back up here on the comments again, even though I am explaining this to you, is some people prefer to run Leoric's Crown over Andriel's Visage. Honestly, it's really one of those situations where you have to choose which of the two helmets work better for you. Leoric's Crown is good because you can put a gem in it and you can boost a specific stat that you're not already boosting. So if you want to put a diamond in there for cooldown, although I don't know why you would do it for this particular armor set, you can, and you will double the effect of cooldown. If you wanted to get more experience, you would put a ruby in there. If you wanted to get, like, thorns, you would put a topaz in there. If you wanted to, you know, do more critical hits, you could put a green gem in there, and it will double the effect, the secondary effect, obviously, of these gems. You know, so you could use that, but if you do, you will lose out on the 20% poison damage potential that you have on Andriel's Visage. So it's a matter of, do you want to do maximum amount of poison damage, or do you just want some extra quality of life type of boost to be able to get your hunts, or not so much for your hunts, but your Greater Rift pushing a little bit more optimal? You could use either or. I would personally say for this particular build that I'm rocking, you're better off with Andriel's Visage. But again, as with every build, there's room for experimentation and to modify it. So it's a matter of personal preference. In terms of optimization, this is where one of these armors is going to be a little bit more difficult to optimize than others. On your helm, ideally, you would want the 20% poison damage. Ideally, on your helm, you probably would like a gem slot so that you would be able to do something with it. Ideally, also on your helm, you would want 6.0 crit hit ratio. Well, the problem is it's a matter of getting those rolls and then also getting those rolls on a ancient legendary piece of it, which is incredibly difficult. Remember, you can only roll one particular element of a stat that is on a armor piece. So my recommendation, if you could get the 20% poison, and you can also get the 6.0% crit hit chance, because Necromancers require maximum crit hit chance and stuff to be able to optimize their particular damage, my recommendation would be to go that particular route. And if you can't get a slot in your helm, forego it for the moment and just constantly try to re-roll it till you get exactly what you desire. It's going to be a bit more difficult because you're relying on trying to get free stats that you want on it, and you also have to get it Ancient Legendary so that it will be super powered up by the Legacy of Dreams gem. So there's a lot of variable factors with that. It could take you maybe a couple hours to get it, or it could take you a couple of weeks, a couple of months, maybe even a year. You're at the mercy with RNG in regards to that. For the rest of the things, really for Stone Gauntlets, my recommendation would be attack speed at least 6.0%. I would recommend crit hit damage at 50%. I would recommend crit hit chance if you could get it at 8.0% or 6.0%. I would recommend that. That way you will be doing a lot more damage and you have a higher potential of doing the maximum amount of critical hit damage possible. So that's my recommendation. You don't necessarily have to follow it, because that's what, like with everything, you can modify it to how your playstyle works. Now, for in terms of optimization, since we're not really using Captain Crimson, you could look to get some cooldown on here, but it's not really going to be able to benefit you, because unlike Captain Crimson, where you just get an increase in attack bonus, it's really going to be not too much of a benefit. My recommendation is, since Skeletal Mage, the one we're using, basically does area of effect damage, I would recommend maximizing where possible your area of effect damage. I would highly recommend anywhere where you can power up Scythe by 15% to definitely do it. Anywhere where you can get your intelligence up on a roll, where you're not sacrificing other things that could be just as equally or vitally important to boosting, like Scythe or particularly Skeletal Mage. Those are the two things really that you're going to be using the most damage with. I would recommend then trying to boost your intelligence in that regard. Movement speed on the boots, you could do it. Again, it's a really matter of what your rolls are looking like. I can't necessarily tell you for certain without looking at what your drops are. You will have to experiment and think for yourselves, which is something that I kind of promote on all my Diablo builds. I give you the foundation to build the set, and from there, it's kind of your responsibility as players to further optimize it and customize it to your desired specifications. That's how all the content has worked on this channel for the last 2 seasons that we have been covering it. It's not going to change anytime soon in that retrospect. Now, keep in mind, as you see here in the showcase, I am using the Skeletal Mages a lot more. Why? Because, again, I'm trying to hit this home to you guys. In order to do the maximum damage when you swing your Curse Scythe, you have to spend some of your essence through Skeletal Mage and shooting Bone Spears. So that way, the next swing that you do, you're gaining back essence and you're doing even more damage thanks to Ledger's Disdain. If you're not burning through that essence, you're kind of not using this armor right. You could still kind of get through the majority of the hunt, or the majority of the greater risk with general ease until you get higher up and they become tanky, but you're going to need to expel essence. Case in point here, Skeletal Mage, Bone Scythe. I'm going to start swinging Scythe, and as you see, after I've burned through a lot of essence I was getting back, I did critical hits there and did a lot of damage. So that is how this armor works. That was a greater of 70. Now keep in mind, because this probably will also come up in the comment section, Legacy of Dreams Poison Scythe builds primarily, unless they're fully optimized, are going to be generally push builds. That means you're just kind of working your way towards pushing the enemies back till you reach the clear time on the Greater Rift. They're not necessarily known for speed farming, at least until, keep this in mind, because this is going to come up, I'm almost certain that you have a fully optimized Legacy of Dreams Poison Scythe build. Now, by fully optimized, I'm referring to the fact that you have all ancient legendary pieces, you have maxed out your Legacy of Dreams gem to the highest level that you can get it possibly, and you have augmented on every piece of your armor and your weapon and your offhand and your rings and your necklace and your belt, so that's a lot of things. You have augmented all those things with gems that are at least level 100. Now, if you're just trying to start out in Diablo 3, which a lot of people I know come to my videos to watch it, it's perfectly okay to augment those gems at a lower level so that you can push a couple of higher greater rifts. Don't stress it. I know a lot of people will tell you otherwise because there is the thought process that you have to play certain aspects of Diablo 3 one way and only that one way, and if you're not doing it that way and following the meta or not experimenting or doing certain things that general people frown upon, because apparently experimentation in the Diablo 3 community is something that's lost on a lot of players and they just like to copy what other people's builds are to get faster clear time. Don't worry about it, guys. Really, play it how you feel. If you feel like you're struggling, augment a armor piece at like level 50 or level 60 gem, and then as you see that you're able to push higher, go back and level up a gem again. The good thing is that you can always rewrite a augmented armor piece with a higher level gem. Only problem is obviously you spent some time and maybe had wasted a gem. Not necessarily, it depends on the thing. So keep that in mind. One thing I would advise against is trying to build a Legacy of Dreams Poison Scythe build as the armor you're going to rock for the season. Reason being, it takes a long time to get these pieces. And because it takes a long time to get these pieces and everything to fall in order, unless you're really doing this with a bunch of group people where you can just kind of get things, it's going to take you a lot longer to do it. So chances are I would recommend going with the Masquerade of the Burning Carnival, which I just covered last week on the channel. And just rock that armor set, or actually, yeah, just rock that armor set in particular, and you should be perfectly good to push up very high. And then if you see like you're on your chapter 12 seasonal journey and you're struggling, then if you have already collected the pieces for Legacy of Dreams Poison Scythe and you have it optimized, then go that way. That's my recommendation. You don't necessarily have to follow it, but if you're a newer player, it's going to take a while to get used to some of the nuances of Legacy of Dreams. Now keep in mind, always in the high greater rifts, you're going to have to use Skeletal Mages to burn through Essence so that when you swing with that Grim Scythe, you will do more damage. It's not a matter of just swinging your Scythe around. We all kind of make that mistake in the beginning and think that that's kind of how the way the build plays, but nope. You have to burn through Essence with Skeletal Mages and Spears. I like to use Skeletal Mages near Elite Packs because you can just get it into Elite Pack and they do a good amount of damage because they're stationary. And if you have area effect damage on, they can cover a wider range of that area and deal subsequently more damage to more enemies, which I kind of like to do. Again, you don't necessarily have to play it that way, but that's just my general preference and playstyle. Now, I'm not personally a big fan of Legacy of Dreams Poison Scythe as a build. I know a lot of people love it. I've said this when I covered this video a very long time ago, which got a lot of views then, that I'm just find it a very boring playstyle because you're just taking the best elements of every set armor and kind of mixing them together to be able to do things. It's basically a mixed armor like you would see in Monster Hunter Rise for Diablo 3. And the thing is that I've never been a big fan of... I have to burn through some essence here. See if I can burn... Oh, all right. A little too late to burn through it. That's why I was burning my bone spears, so I could just get burn through essence so I could swing for more damage. But personally, you know what? I'm not really a fan of up-close melee type of weapons for Diablo 3. There's a lot of people who like this type of playstyle, but for me, it's really boring because you're not really doing too much outside of keeping an eye on your bone armor, keeping an eye on whether you've been burning through the essence, and then just swinging your scythe around and trying to not get squashed. That's a thing I should point out for a lot of players, because you see I'm not taking any real deaths here, but one thing that I would recommend is always try to keep your simulacrums on cooldown so that they're active, because let's say you happen to take an unforeseen death, and it will happen as you get higher up on the greater rifts. If you do not have your simulacrums, keep in mind when you swing your scythe, they're swinging their scythe as well, so it's basically 3 attacks for the price of 1. What happens is without the simulacrums, you are not able to swing as much, you're not able to prop the curses as much, and you're not able to do as much damage with it, which puts you in a vicarious situation. So it's always important to just kind of keep the simulacrums on cooldown. If they're already active, there's no reason for you to click them again, because they're going to remain active. That's what Haunted Visions does anyway in Arcanized Cube. So just keep that in mind. That's a very, very, very important tip for you guys. Now, in terms of Diablo 3 content on the channel, I'm just going to give it to you guys straight. There's some good news and there's some bad news. Good news is we will still be covering Diablo 3 content for now. The bad news is it will only be once a week from now on, starting next week. Reason for this is a couple of reasons, actually. First reason is there isn't that many dramatic changes to Diablo 3 in Season 23. We've already covered Firebird. I will probably cover a different build of that in the not-too-distant future, because there's been a couple of new builds that have emerged that are better than the mirror image one that I was rocking. So I probably revisit that, but outside of that, outside of Rothmon, which I do plan to redo, although I'm still not a particularly fan of that particular armor, you know what, outside of those, outside of the armors that got their nerfs and buffs, everything is pretty much the same in terms of information that I supplied to you guys in Season 22 and Season 21 even for certain armors of Diablo 3. Like, there gets to a point where going back and revisiting armors is kind of pointless if I'm just regurgitating the same type of information and just showing you clearing greater rifts about 10 greater rifts higher, or maybe 20 greater rifts higher, or 30 greater rifts higher, but really nothing of the build has changed. So it kind of gets to a point where I don't want to particularly put out stagnant content and pushing out a whole bunch of videos of stuff that you can already watch that's available in the playlist. For videos in Season 23, it'd be kind of weird to just go back and do a Season 23 video for a particular class that hasn't really been affected and no changes whatsoever. It's just kind of a retread, and I don't feel like really doing that, because I feel like that's kind of a waste of time on my part and as well as your part. A second reason really is I'm kind of a little bit burnt out on Diablo 3. There's only so much you could really play Diablo 3. I've been playing Diablo 3 on this channel since pretty much a little mid into when the pandemic started and COVID-19 situation occurred. You know, we've been playing it. It was kind of an experiment. It was supposed to be a seasonal type of thing where I did it for like a season on the channel and then, you know, swapped it out for newer games. But obviously the videos caught on and I kind of was really enjoying doing it. But now it's gotten to the point where, like, Season 23 even, it's been stagnant. There's been certain things that have changed, but it's not changes that have been able to really hold my attention or really have inspired me to make videos outside of maybe the follower video. That's, like, the only real or new thing that I can cover and talk about. So I didn't want to downright abandon the particular content. I do want to see out Season 23. The plan right now as it stands is we're going to be doing one Diablo 3 video a week on the channel. I'm going to be trying out some newer games. Feel free to leave suggestions on your games you'd like to see if the channel in that retrospect. And then when Diablo 2 Resurrected comes out, which the rumor right now is they're saying December. I think we're still going to see it in November. I just kind of feel it in my jellies, so to speak, that that's going to be how they particularly go with Diablo 2 Resurrected. When Diablo 2 comes out, I am going to pretty much stop doing Diablo 3 content. I'm going to put all my efforts and focus into doing what's the new kid on the block, even though it's technically the old kid on the block just wearing new clothes, Diablo 2. So the channel will be switching over to Diablo 2 Resurrected. Maybe what we'll probably do then is we'll bring it back to 2 videos a week, and if we see they perform even better, we'll do 3 videos a week. But pretty much Diablo 3 at that point, once Diablo 2 drops, is going to be phased out in the channel, because most people that I know are going to be switching to Diablo 3. Anyway, most of my viewers even I know are just waiting for Diablo 3 to drop so they can play at Diablo 2, I should say. So pretty much that's the game plan in terms of how we're going to be handling Diablo content. I'm not saying that maybe every once in the blue, if there's like a really big significant change to a set armor, like assuming there is a Season 24, which I'm having a hard time believing we are going to see a Season 24 of Diablo at this point, especially with Diablo 2 Resurrected around the horizon. But, you know, if there's some really big significant change or a nerf, or they get a rework for armor, such as the, you know, Firebird set got, I will definitely revisit and talk about that, but it's not something that I'm going to feel need to kind of revisit Diablo 3 more often or frequently on the channel. So that's basically the plan in that respect. So Diablo 3 or Diablo content on the channel is not necessarily ending. We're going to do one video a week. Probably, I think we're going to do it on Thursdays. So that way it frees up Tuesdays for an old game that I want to play and bring back on the channel. Can get some spotlight. So it'll probably be starting next week on Thursdays, and we'll do a video every Thursday. And obviously I look at the comments to see, and I also look at previous videos to see what people are interested in terms of me revisiting and doing a build. Then we'll cover things like that. Obviously the Rothmon armor I'm going to go back and do. I'm not going to do it next week though. The plan for next week at the moment is I am going to be doing the Demon Hunter Shadow and Pale build again. Going to show you how it fares in Season 23. There haven't been really significant changes to it. Hasn't been really reworked to the buffing of its weapons and stuff. But it does pretty well. It's a nice, fun, non-meta-ish build to cover. So that's what's going to probably be on the schedule for that. I am going to go and do a Leapquake Barbarian build again, because we did one a while ago. There are a lot of people whining and complaining about it because I was testing out Ancient Spear instead of using Seismic Slam, so I'm going to show you the Seismic Slam build. I'm not particularly a big fan of Leapquake Barbarian because it just leaves you exposed to a lot of things. So keep that in mind as well. Again, now let's say you fast-forwarded and you're confused as to how this armor set works. Again, on high greater rifts, you need to expend your essence. You do this with Shadow Mages and using Bone Spears. And then when you swing your Grim Scythe, it does more damage because it gets back essence because it's a resource generator. And thanks to Ledger's Disdain in particular, that's why it does more damage. So it's very important to burn your essence. Case in point, my essence completely burnt out here. So when I start swinging these, they're doing the most damage possible. This is probably one of the more optimal situations where you could just get off a chunk of damage and you can just push these enemies back and things. So keep that in mind. So ironically, this is one of the few builds where wasting all your essence is a good thing. Usually for the Necromancer, that is a generally bad idea. So keep that in mind. Another thing that I'm going to address, actually, I know it's kind of Necromancer related, but it's not for this particular armor. Grace of Venaris, somebody was asking about why I didn't invest more in the cooldown for Land of the Dead. Now keep in mind, it's a Corpse Explosion build, and pretty much the way that build operates is I use Corpse Explosions to do major source of damage. Yeah, you can keep your Land of the Dead active, but wasting a whole bunch of cooldown on there when I'm not necessarily need it. And obviously the person didn't even pay attention to the fact that I was using Captain Crimson and had cooldown in very vital spots where needed. You know, it's Land of the Dead is there to help the build. It's not there to be used as the crutch for that, so keep that in mind. It was a really confusing comment. Sometimes when I see comments on Diablo 3 videos, you kind of tell that the person that's commenting on the video is either trolling, doesn't really know too much about what they're talking about because they probably haven't played it and particularly higher greater rifts, or don't realize the fact that it's a variation of particular armor builds. I don't try to copy what everybody else does. I try to put my own spin on things. And also the other thing, that most of these videos are just starter guides for people who might just be getting into Diablo 3 and don't really know the basic contents of how to run things. Like, yeah, I could go on one of my other accounts that's maxed out with all the level 150 gems that I have and full optimization of my armors and everything, but that's boring. And there's a whole bunch of other content creators already kind of doing that. So maybe you should go watch them instead of, like, trolling over here or something. I don't get it. Like I said, I've kind of really just been burnt out with the Diablo 3 community as of late. There's a lot of new players that have been playing lately and kind of bad seeds. But hey, it is what it is, right? Okay, guys, so that was level 80 Greater Rift, 6 minutes and 49-second clear time. That will be even faster if you have this fully ancient legendary or higher and all your armor pieces are augmented. Anyway, that's going to do it for this week's Diablo 3 video. As always, a like and subscribe are greatly appreciated as they help the channel grow, and I will see you next time.